former Marine, criminal law expert, founder of the Freedom Summit, the attorney for freedom, Marc J. Victor.
You guys hear me okay? All right. So my name's Marc Victor. I'm the attorney for freedom. And this podium here is not set up for a short guy, so I may just walk around a little bit. So I wrote this, well, actually, how many of you have heard me speak before? Just show of hands. All right, maybe roughly half. So let me just say this, just by way of introduction. My name's Marc Victor. I'm a criminal defense attorney. I go by the attorney for freedom because freedom is more important to me than most things on the planet. And everything I do at my law firm, I try to do so we move the bus forward for liberty. And that's sort of what I'm going to be talking about today. I give lots of speeches. I write lots of articles. I like you, think freedom is more important than money. And it is more important than money. There are many other things more important than money, but damn it, freedom is one of those things. And I think that everybody in every profession and every job, no matter what we do, we ought to be promoting freedom while we're here on the planet. So what I wanted to talk about this year is sort of what I left off with last year, if some of you heard my talk. I want to be controversial. I know that's hard to believe here, but so I wrote this article. I don't know how many of you have seen it, but it's on that table back there. You can also get it online. And I entitled it, "The Immorality of Eating Steak and Why I Acknowledge Your Right to Eat It." Yeah, I said that. I think eating steak is immoral, but I don't think it should be illegal. Why do I think that? Well, I wrote this article and I was very ambitious in terms of writing the article. What I wanted to do was to speak to people in many different groups. I wanted them to be able to read my article and get something out of it that inspired them to think about freedom or to promote freedom. So I really came up with 5 different purposes, and maybe it's a tad convoluted in terms of what I did here, but the first purpose, which is always my most important purpose just generally, is trying to explain libertarianism, trying to explain the non-aggression principle to people who have never heard of it, which is most of the world, right? So I want to talk about that just for a minute. It's part of what I talked about in this article, and it's part of what I talk about in almost every article that I have ever written. It's about freedom. I don't know why it's such a hard sell for us. It shouldn't be a hard sell, right? I always tell people, what I'm trying to sell you on is that you ought to be in charge of you, and I ought to be in charge of me. I don't know why that is so damn hard to understand. It's pretty simple. I mean, what are the options here? I mean, we could go through the various options, right? You could be in charge of both of us. That doesn't sound so good for me. I could be in charge of both of us. Maybe you won't like that. I'd be fine with that, by the way, if you guys are cool with that, but probably most of you aren't going to be cool with that. I mean, you could be in charge of me. I could be in charge of you. That would be kind of weird. So what's left? The obvious choice, right? Why is it so complicated for us to explain this to other people? So I talk about that in my article. People at their core should just sort of inherently, because we're human beings, understand the non-aggression principle, right? How about I don't be a thug? How about you don't be a thug? That might be another way to explain it. I won't initiate force against you. You don't initiate force against me. You're in charge of you. You own you. That's why you're in charge of you, because you own you and I own me. Well, one of the important points that I've found since I've been talking about this stuff, really over the last 23 years since I've been a criminal defense lawyer, because those of you who do know me know that it was actually Butler Schaefer, a law professor of mine at Southwestern University. And if you're not familiar with Butler's writings, I would encourage you to read some of his stuff. You could go to LouRockwell.com and just put in Butler Schaefer. There's many articles. He kind of took my brain out of my head and turned me from what I would call a conservative Republican who thought people were in charge of themselves, which didn't really make sense, into a libertarian. So I've been talking about this for 23 years, and one of the things that I find very important trying to convince people that they should be in charge of themselves is this concept of the legal realm in the moral realm. They're two different worlds, right? Because we've all had this experience where we've spoken with people and they've got some moral hang up on some issue, right? Just say, I don't know, prostitution. I got a good friend and I talk about him in my article. He thinks prostitution is immoral. Fantastic. He's a Christian. It's part of his belief system, whatever. But he also holds that prostitution ought to be legal. That's a big boy in the freedom world. I get that. He gets it. He understands the difference between the legal world, which is the world that we're going to use force. We're going to make you comply with it, whether you like it or not. That ought to be a small, very carefully thought out world. We libertarians like to describe that world as the non-aggression principle. People who violate the non-aggression principle, they're in the legal world. That's where we deal with them. And then there's the moral world. All that stuff that we have opinions on for lots of different reasons, but we don't feel strongly enough about it that we want to impose our views on other people. And I think if we can make that a centerpiece of our sort of reach out campaign when we talk to people, say, look, I get what you're saying. I understand. You think smoking marijuana is immoral, whatever. I don't want to fight you on that. If that's your moral belief, fantastic. Can we agree? You don't get to impose your moral views on other people. It's the same thing we might say about Sharia law, right? If that's your morality, fine. If you want to live that way, fine. But you have no right to impose your views on other people. I also decided to take a shot at liberals and conservatives in that section. The main goal of that part of my paper is to do the thing we all ought to be working on. It's the only thing that matters in this movement. The only thing that matters in this movement. Changing enough hearts and minds to be pro-freedom. We don't have to get everybody, but we need to get more than we got right now. I'm encouraged to see this turnout here in Acapulco, which I think is kind of a pain in the ass place to get to, right? You got to switch planes, you got a long wait, you may have to go through Mexico City. Those of you who went through Mexico City, I made that mistake last year. That's why I went through Houston this year. It's a tough place to get to, and yet, this is a pretty hardcore named event, right? It's for anarchists. It's Anarchapulco, anarcho-capitalist. And look at the group we got here. This is a growing movement. I wouldn't worry about who's elected to office right now or what particular policies are put out there. Yes, that stuff matters, but it's not the most important thing. We got to change more hearts and more minds. Once we do that, everything else will take care of itself. So moving on to the second part here, I wrote this article also because I think that we need to do something we don't want to do. And I know we don't want to do it because I haven't wanted to do it. We got to talk about, we stand around and we talk about how much we love the non-aggression principle, right? I'm a man of peace. I don't initiate force against others. But then when the questions of other animals, non-human animals, come to the forefront, what do we do with that? We do exactly what I used to do with it. We sweep it right under the rug. We just say, oh, well, they're animals. The non-aggression principle doesn't apply to them. And we just leave it hanging there. And I did that. And I, like you, felt kind of uncomfortable about it because we know deep down inside that's not the right way to deal with it, right? That's just not the right way to deal with it. We need to think it through. And so I started thinking this through for myself. And this was an important question to me because what I thought was, if I'm wrong about this and I'm eating steak, I'm no better than the Democrats and the Republicans. I am violating the non-aggression principle. And that worried me. I don't want to feel like I'm a fraud walking around talking about the non-aggression principle. I'm a great man of peace. Well, I'm supporting a damn Auschwitz for cows and chickens and pigs. It's an Auschwitz. I mean, let's be real about it. Let's talk about it. I know you want to eat meat. I did too, and I wasn't going there. But are we more interested in truth? Are we more interested in what actually violates the non-aggression principle? Or are we more interested in justifying the crap that we're putting in our mouths? I was in the second category until recently. So I started thinking about this question, and what I determined is this is a difficult question for us. I wanted to describe my journey to thinking about this question. I didn't start thinking about this question because I was sort of an enlightened libertarian. I changed my diet for health reasons, completely for health reasons, having absolutely no thought about the non-aggression principle. But once I got there, and once I started thinking about it, free from my biases about I just ain't going there because I'm eating meat, I don't care, I started realizing this is sort of a difficult question. It raises lots of other difficult sub-questions, like, for example, do I want to treat the bonobo monkey, the same way as I want to treat the mosquito? I'm not sure about that question. By the way, I've talked about this a few times, and I recognize that I'm a good target for an ad hominem argument here. Maybe I got leather shoes on. Maybe my car's got leather. Maybe this, maybe that. I realized last night I had my girl in the hotel, and she was bothered by this mosquito. Kept buzzing around our brains. And I woke up in the middle of the night, and I initiated force against that mosquito. And I thought about whether I violated the non-aggression principle. I mean, he was threatening a trespass. He was trespassing. He was threatening to bite me. Maybe I could justify it along those lines. But is this something I should think about? Is it something I should think about if I take my firearm and I walk out into the forest and I see some big bull elk and I decide to blow him away because I just like the fun of killing stuff? That's what hunting is, right? That's what it really is. I like the fun of killing stuff. Okay, you can do that. But are you part of our group? Are you a man or woman of peace? Are you a respecter of the non-aggression principle if you love killing things for the fun of killing things? So it occurs to me that there are different reasons. There might be a different analysis for why we kill things. So in any event, I started thinking about slavery because I've always been bothered by Thomas Jefferson. Haven't you been bothered by this? You read the writings of Thomas Jefferson, they sound very libertarian. He talks about self-ownership. He talks about sort of bottom-up government, not top-down government. He sounds like a libertarian, but he died holding slaves. Doesn't this bother anybody? The great founders of our nation, the great men of freedom, the people who signed the Declaration of Independence, almost all of them said these great things while still shackling our fellow human beings. How did they do that in their brain? I know what they did. If we asked them, if I had Thomas Jefferson here and I said, hey man, let's talk about this non-aggression principle. Do you like that? Oh yeah, I love it. Sacred. How do you hold slaves? I know what he's going to say. We know what he's going to say. Oh, black people, they don't, the non-aggression principle just doesn't apply to them. I'm sure that's how it was justified. Are we doing the same thing? That was my question. Are we doing the same thing? And I've been concerned about that. So I thought of a way to deal with this. This was my third purpose in this paper, and this is my contribution for the people in this room. How do we deal? This is one of many very difficult questions. If you are new to libertarianism, you are a new anarchist, you've decided that the non-aggression principle is a wonderful principle and it sounds great in theory, I'm totally in agreement with you. If you've thought about how to practically implement that into society, you have run into some difficulties. Not a lot of them, but there are some difficulties. There are areas that we libertarians will disagree about all day long, and animal rights happens to be one of those issues. There are many such issues that we libertarians can disagree on. We could make lists of them and talk about them. I list some of them, maybe I won't talk about too many of them, but questions of reasonableness, issues of self-defense, how to deal with minors, abortion questions. There are many issues that we libertarians will disagree on. How should we resolve these disputes? Are they big disputes? Are they reasons why we should be at each other's throats because we don't have perfect agreement on libertarian principles? I don't think so. I think we should deal with this thing differently. That was my main contribution to this whole effort. I can list lots of these issues out there, but instead of going through all of them, I want to talk about how to deal with them. I think there ought to be a presumption in our world, and I'm speaking to the advanced libertarians now, the ones who recognize, who have been in those late night discussions with other libertarians, splicing hairs on whether something violates the non-aggression principle. Speaking as a lawyer, somebody who deals with things like presumptions and burdens of proof and all of that, there's a way to deal with this stuff. I think the presumption ought to go to the moral realm. Why do I think it should go to the moral realm? Because that's the place that we just disagree peacefully. That's the place where we all say, hey, you got a different moral opinion than me, no problem. Once we move something into the legal realm and we say this violates the non-aggression principle, somebody can show up and take you down, and we're perfectly fine with it, right? An example of that might be, say, the case of theft. Somebody's in your house and they're stealing something. I'm a man of peace. I'm for the non-aggression principle, but I'm totally justified at going out there using force, tackling that person, and wrestling away my property from them. I'm a perfect libertarian. That's the legal realm. I can also hire my agent to show up, and I don't care if he shows up with a gun or a badge or whatever else. If he's acting as my agent to stop a violation of the non-aggression principle, I'm perfectly fine with it, putting aside for a moment the issue of how do we pay that person. So putting something into the legal realm is a big deal. And I think if not enough libertarians who are honestly thinking about how to implement the non-aggression principle, if enough libertarians just simply aren't persuaded into that position, then it stays in the moral realm and it rots there until enough of us are satisfied that maybe even beyond a reasonable doubt, this act violates the non-aggression principle. That's where I put eating steak. I think that there are a minority of libertarians right now who, if we're asked, does this violate the non-aggression principle, there's probably a majority of whom will say, no, it doesn't. Okay, therefore I don't advocate a law that says eating steak ought to be illegal. But I could imagine a community someday that felt differently about that. Not because they were wanting to get to some end for any other reason, but because they're honestly trying to determine how the non-aggression principle applies. If enough people sit around and they say, you know what, we think that eating steak violates the non-aggression principle, then there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That moves into the legal realm. And we ought to resolve many of these questions the same way. The issues of minors, the issues of abortion, lots of those issues. How do we resolve this animal rights question? I don't know. I think it's difficult. I took a stab at it in my article. I acknowledge that my position is completely subjective, totally subjective. In fact, if you look at my article, I even entitled this, Marc Victor's Subjective Animal Rights Scale. But I want to take a stab at it and see what you think. I think it matters. There's a difference between the bonobo and the mosquito. What exactly that difference is could probably be the subject of another convention. I don't know exactly. And people can disagree on what the differences are. Maybe there's something about the mosquito that makes the mosquito higher on what I call the wonderfulness of life scale than does the bonobo monkey rate. I don't know. Things about, are they self-aware? Do they feel pain? Are they complex organisms? Those types of things. That's the wonderfulness of life scale. And I rank those various creatures. I start at the top with one variety of animal that we find special, the human being. And I put a human being up there at the top of the wonderfulness of life scale. And then I move down to the bonobo, down to the dogs, the cows, the rats, the hamsters, whatever, down to the mosquitoes, down to the plants. And we need to look at the differences and acknowledge that maybe there are moral differences between killing one versus killing the other. Maybe there are reasons you can kill a human, right? There are reasons you can kill a human. We call it self-defense. Even we libertarians totally agree that you can kill a human being for this reason. Can you kill a bonobo monkey for that reason? Yeah, I think you could probably kill anything for that reason if it's a legitimate self-defense issue. Could there be other reasons, like critical life-saving research? Maybe if we killed a mosquito and studied him, we could cure cancer. That's okay with me. I'm all right with that. There might be other reasons. So I think what I did is created one axis, the x-axis, and said wonderfulness of life scale, top to bottom rankings. Then I created the y, the reason we kill the thing. On the other axis, on one end might be just for the fun of it. We call that hunting. Kill just for the fun of it. What do I think you get to kill just for the fun of it? In my world, nothing. I don't think you should get to kill anything for the fun of it. And then all the way up to self-defense. And I simply just drew a line down the middle. So my estimation was some things are moral and some things are not moral. Feel free to take a look at that. Feel free to criticize me on it as well and make your own conclusions. I think it's a hard question, and I admit that. I'm not standing up here saying to you, I got it all figured out, and I'm trying to persuade you into that. What I am saying is, I think we ought to take the non-aggression principle serious. And I think we ought to think about it genuinely, legitimately, and ask ourselves the question, does this actually violate the non-aggression principle? And then if it does, take your lumps. If it does, and you are an initiator of force, and you violate the non-aggression principle, maybe you should be honest with yourself about that. My final purpose of writing this article is because I wanted to step outside my comfort zone and talk to my fellow brothers and sisters for a moment and just say something to you that you haven't heard, that I think ties into our movement. We don't believe everything that we have been told from the government. I've evaluated this stuff for me. I wrote in that article some personal information. I go to the gym 6 days a week. I've never been overweight, but my blood pressure was rising. My cholesterol level was rising. If you're in your 40s and you eat the way I used to eat, your blood pressure and cholesterol is probably rising too. And you probably got some doctor telling you need to take some meds, like the other at least 50% of our fellow brothers and sisters, adult humans in the United States, on some kind of prescription meds. Maybe, just maybe, we got fed the wrong information by the government. Maybe, just maybe, the dairy industry has had some influence on those politicians who can be bought and sold. Maybe the meat industry. Do you think that's a big industry with lots of money, with lots of lobbyists that get the government to break out the 4 groups of foods that you should be eating in school, subsidizing milk, subsidizing what you should be eating? Maybe that's had some effect. I'm here to tell you, my life got 1,000,000 times better when I stopped eating almost all animal protein. And I'm just here to tell you about that. I put that in this paper because I want libertarians to be healthy. I want you guys on the planet for as long as possible. You're my brothers and sisters fighting for freedom in this movement. Lots of people who started this stuff are dead. Murray Rothbard's gone, right? Thomas Jefferson, to the extent he was a freedom guy, with all his flaws and everything, is gone. Lots of people who came before us. Are we going to let this freedom movement die out? No. We're on the upswing right now. As far as I'm concerned, things are going great. There are lots of libertarians everywhere. I'm having an easier time convincing people they should want to be in charge of themselves than I used to. Weed is almost legal everywhere now, right, in the world. What an opportunity we have to ignore the stupid discussion about whether weed is good for you or bad for you, to ignore the stupid discussion about whether it fixes medical conditions or not. That's nice. I hope it does. But that ain't our reason. Our reason is simple. It's your damn body. And whether it's good for you or whether it's bad for you, whether it fixes shit or whether it doesn't fix disease, doesn't matter to us. It's your damn body. It's your damn decision. What a better time has ever existed on the planet to make that argument than right now. Right now. Not only that, we got such a great opportunity here to take 2 movements over and put them where they rightly belong, which is under our umbrella. The peace movement, that's our movement. We should own that movement. If you are in the peace movement, you have to be in the freedom movement. How on earth could you possibly say I'm for peace while I'm still for initiating force against non-aggressors? Explain that to me. You can't be. Take that opportunity. Every time you run into somebody who's pushing peace, compliment them on that and assume they already get the freedom thing. And when they tell you they don't know anything about that, explain their ignorance to them. We are a necessary prerequisite. Freedom is a necessary prerequisite. Non-initiation of force, the absence of coercion, is necessary before you get to peace. We need to do a better job bringing that peace movement under the freedom movement. And now, I got to tell you, the animal rights movement, I think that's our crowd too. I think that's our crowd. We should be talking to that group and saying, help me understand. What you're really saying is we shouldn't be initiating force against the cow, against the chicken, against the pig. Okay, I understand that argument. Why the hell are you supporting initiation of force against other humans? They're our crowd. We need to take that movement and make it our movement. It's all about non-initiation of force, whether it's the human animal or the non-human animal. That's the way we ought to be thinking about this stuff. If we could get those two movements to see that the non-initiation of force crowd, the non-aggression principle, our group, is a necessary prerequisite to both of their groups, we can increase our movement dramatically, very quickly. There are lots of people out there in the world who never heard the word libertarian. They don't know what we're about. They're a mishmash of different issues. They like some things from the Democrats, some things from the conservatives. It's our job to put the principle out there in front of them, lay it out in all its simplicity and its elegance. Just a suggestion, I don't know how we get to the non-aggression principle. There are different ways there. My objectivist friends think it's a moral absolute. My economist friends say it's just the best way for humans to interact on the planet. There are Christians who come to that conclusion, Buddhists who come to that conclusion. I don't care how you get there. It's a nice discussion, but I don't want to waste my breath with somebody alienating them. It's that they got to the non-aggression principle that I care about. Once you're there, let's close ranks. Let's talk about it. Let's promote it. Let's talk about ways we can be more effective and more efficient in our advocacy in that all-important mission, really, to save what we're doing here on the planet, to promote freedom, so we can get to peace. That's the reason I'm a freedom activist, because I'm a peace activist, and I don't have the balls yet to talk about peace, because we're not even at freedom yet. Once we get to freedom, I'll start switching, and we'll start doing conferences on peace, which I think is an additional component, something else we can talk about later on. So I want to end with just, I know I got a few minutes, and I know the trains are running on time here. I got like 10 minutes. I wanted to leave just a little bit of time for questions. Oh, one more thing I wanted to say very quickly. You know how we're always talking about that we don't like central planning? We're just sort of fundamentally against central planning. It doesn't work so well. Just a thought. I don't think central planning works so well in hardly any area, and it certainly doesn't work well in the fight for freedom. And I'm starting to say more and more with every group I'm in front of, we're doing a disservice to our movement, bagging on our fellow libertarian brothers and sisters who see the path to freedom slightly different than we do. Voting, it's not my thing. It's just not my thing. If you don't vote, I get it. I understand why you don't vote. If you do vote, if you're voting as a means to bring about some type of freedom change in the world, I might not agree with your methods, but I'm damn sure going to support what you're doing. I'm going to support you whether you're running for office as a hardcore libertarian. I'm going to support you whether you're running for office as a Republican, like Ron Paul did, while promoting libertarian ideas. I'm also going to support you if you're really a libertarian and you're running for office like a Republican and you're trying to sound more like a Republican so you get elected, maybe like Rand Paul was doing. I'm still going to support you. I'm going to support you even if I don't agree with every single thing that you're saying. If you're trying to move that bus in the right direction, I want more momentum. Speaking of a freedom guy who's getting older and older and older every year, damn it, I want more freedom, and I want it right now. So grab your Republican brothers and sisters who support their little isolated issues for freedom and drag them down the road and stretch their brains a little bit and make them feel bad about violating the non-aggression principle. Who cares what they call themselves? If they call themselves Republicans or Democrats or Libertarians or pro-freedom or anarcho-capitalists, or they say I'm voluntarist or whatever they say, who cares? Are you moving the bus in the direction of freedom? If you are, doesn't mean I love what you're doing. It doesn't mean I'm going to give you a free pass about arguing with you about it either. I might work on you, I might not, I don't know. But at the end of the day, I'm going to shake your hand or give you a hug. And when I part with you, I'm going to say, brother, sister in freedom, let's fight the battle together. Let me know if you need something from me. Can I have your back in some area? We're all trying to move the bus in the right direction. It's the best time ever to be alive on the planet. The best time ever. We can literally win this fight. The communications have never been better. And since we're on the right side of the argument, this is good for us. The more they get, the more they find out, the more they learn about freedom and free markets and the non-aggression principle, the more they see standards of living rise, the more they see in Colorado, this is my argument in Arizona, Colorado legalized marijuana. Look, the world didn't end in Colorado. The sky didn't fall. People still go to work. Parents are not biting the heads off of their children and sucking their blood. They're still getting them to school. Life is okay, and fewer human beings are going to prison. That's what I'm happy about. So let's start the case. So let me end by just saying, let's not be freedom wimps about it. When we talk about the drug war, let's talk about all drugs. Let's deal with the hard questions. Let's say meth should be legal, cocaine should be legal, all prescription drugs, free people, free competent adults ought to be able to decide what to put in their bodies. That's part of freedom. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to take questions. Any questions? No questions? All right, out there.
You said that freedom is a necessary condition for peace, and I was wondering why wouldn't it be sufficient condition for peace?
That's a great question. Why isn't freedom sufficient for peace? I think you could be a pro-freedom person, a libertarian, and a complete asshole. Why do I say this? All that is required to be a good libertarian is you don't initiate force against your neighbor, period. You're a good libertarian. I could come outside of my house and scream swears at you every day. Talk about how you're a complete jerk, and I hope your life turns to crap every single day, and I'm a perfect libertarian. I never help you with anything. I don't care about anything. I like to see you fail, and I'm a great libertarian. I'm an ass, but I'm a nice libertarian. I don't think you would say we were at peace. I think peace requires something in addition to non-coercion. Peace requires me to come out of my house and say, how's it going, man? Can I help you with anything? How's your life going? And I care about that. That's where I want to get. I think we can get there. And yet, just as this last little comment, peace to me is a necessary prerequisite to love. And that's really where I want to go. I wish my friend Barry Cooper was here, because he talks about love all the time. And if Barry was here, he'd be happy about that. We need to really love thy neighbor. I know it comes out of the Bible, but it really makes a lot of sense. Until we can get to freedom, we can't get to peace. Until we get to peace, we can't get to love. Next question.
Great talk.
Thank you.
Technical question. Animals can't own property. Can they own themselves?
I think it's a very hard question, and I think it's a question we deal with right now. I'll tell you, I'm dealing with an animal cruelty case in my office right now, where a woman with good intentions took on a bunch of animals trying to take care of too many, and she wasn't able to do such a great job, according to the state. So I asked one of the chief investigators, How do these animals have any rights at all? And why aren't you shutting down the big cow factory down the street in Arizona? They're actually killing animals. You're saying my client didn't put enough water out for the dog and pick up the poop. I get that. She could have treated the animals a little better, but they're killing them by the thousands down there. Why don't you deal with that? She didn't have an answer for me. So we're in this weird section right now where it's okay to kill some animals. I guess if you're a corporation or something, you can literally chop their heads off and do anything you want with them. But if you don't give them enough food, or you leave them and there's too much pee on the ground or something like that with your dog, because dogs have a special status. They have some ownership interest in their body. And we already buy that. I don't think you're prepared to take a position that it's okay to take your dog if you feel like it and just chop his head off for the fun of it. We have a problem with that. Why we have a problem with that, I'm not 100% sure of. It's because we recognize, I think, that this is an initiation of force. And yeah, maybe the dog's not competent to run his own life, but maybe he has some right not to have his head chopped off. Other questions? Is that it? Oh, another question.
I believe this is hard, but the non-aggression principle comes with the self-defense principle. When your mosquito is attacked, can you kill another person to defend it?
Can I kill another person to defend?
To defend it.
To defend the other person?
To defend the mosquito.
Oh, to defend the mosquito.
Or your dog. Or your cow.
I don't think you could kill. For me, if you look at my stab at trying to resolve this, if you take my article, which is sitting back there on that table, by the way, I think you only get to kill another human in a legitimate self-defense situation, period. That's defending another human being. That's how I see the thing. I think it would be inappropriate to kill a human because they're planning to swat a mosquito. So that would be considered a murder in my community.
But your dog
but I recognize these are hard questions. I think we should start talking about them, though, because we need to figure out, and again, I don't think that there's a solid answer on this. I think, and I'm not afraid or ashamed to say, different libertarian communities are going to come up with different rules. If you don't like the rule in that libertarian community, go to this libertarian community. That's perfectly fine. The world isn't going to shift all of a sudden to some utopia where everybody agrees on everything. We should agree on one thing. You don't get to initiate force. What that means exactly, there could be some disagreement on, and there certainly is. I think that's all the time. I have 2 minutes. Okay, another question? Let's go over here. You're going to have to yell it out. I'll repeat it. The question is, do I think humans are the top of the food chain in the universe? You know, as I say, all of my conclusions are subject to reevaluation at any time. I'll admit that I'm a tad biased when I put humans at the top of the food chain. Maybe you are too. Maybe there's something else in the universe that will feel differently about. I don't know. But at the moment, I don't know that I'm going to get much disagreement in this room about humans being the top of the food chain, but I'm absolutely interested to hear your argument if you have one. That's all I have. My name is Marc Victor. I'm really easy to find, by the way. You can always just put Attorney for Freedom in Google, and I'll be happy to answer any question you have. Thank you very much.
In a world where Antifa riots in the city streets, cops rage out of control, and the leader of the free world is a fat-ass casino owner, one event stands alone to make anarchy great again.
I actually love humanity. That is why I'm an anarchist.
Backwards in the building like we the ceiling, we illin'. No matter who find it appealing, I'm here and I got a feeling that we'll be dealing a lot of pain with a penicillin get drilled in your head. That we are monsters and yeah, we come from the slums, and for months we've been pumped, but for once I am now comfortable. I want to grow, I want some more success, and I want to know that greatness can't be rushed, can't be lost, so face the fuss. Feel free to hate on us, we lace them up. Dudes, we done paid them up. Keep snakes away from us and safe from us, you might wanna be. Remember when clowns used to make fun of me and now they wanna be me. See me and they run at me, I'm gonna be the greatest, yeah I wanna be, but I am not the one to be the fakest for the sake of being played. I'm here, like I never left, set to hell. Nah, cause I can't just fail, so just prepare your ears, it'll get for real. Okay, from here, we will never take the sale, it's grind time. My mind and my thoughts, my highs and my faults, my wins and my loss. When will I fall off? It's a test for me. You are now listening to Veracity. Yeah.
Fuck the media, fuck the banks, fuck drone strikes, fuck tanks, fuck hunger, fuck war, fuck ignoring of the poor, fuck the left, fuck the right, fuck the government. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.